Hello, my name is Dr. Sheila Simone Brown, author, producer, publisher, and owner of Simone Publishing. But more importantly, I'm a domestic abuse survivor. Everyone will be confronted with life challenges that may hold them back from seeing the reflection of how great they really are. But can you overcome? Will you overcome? I have, and I encourage you to. If you have the desire to pen your healing as I did in the book and movie entitled Beneath the Scar, my own personal story, I would like to facilitate your transition to and become an author with a 1-hour virtual consultation normally valued at $500 but discounted for TDC listeners at $249. As the owner of Simone Publishing, an experienced producer, and a survivor, I believe in overcoming challenges. Let me help jumpstart your journey to healing and become an author. To learn more about me, you can visit www.drsimonebrown.com, which is spelled DRSAMONE Brown.com, or email me at drsimonebrown@gmail.com. If you have not seen Beneath the Scar, which screened in film festivals around the world and theaters, is currently on Vimeo and soon to be on Amazon. You may also purchase my book, Beneath the Scar Rise to Healing, on Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble, or even my website, drsimonebrown.com. To book your special discounted consultation, call 214-273-4100 or go to drsimonebrown.com. Use the discount code TDC.
Well, hello podcast listeners, and welcome to the Doctor's Corner. I am your host, Dr. K, a proud United States Navy veteran, and on TDC we faithfully acknowledge our military and veteran population while encouraging nationwide literacy. Big facts. Only half of U.S. adults can read above and comprehend the 8th grade reading level. And because reading is still fundamental, on the Doctor's Corner we conduct literary critiques from a wide variety of genres to offer you recommendations for your next compelling read. Before we get started with today's featured compilation, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge Southern New Hampshire University, what we affectionately call SNU, for their latest achievement of becoming one of the top 10 universities for earning the military-friendly designation. As an adjunct faculty member at Southern New Hampshire University, I am proud to highlight the phenomenal leadership at SNU who proved their commitment to supporting military families by enabling them to maximize their benefits and save them money during their academic pursuit. For instance, SNU offers up to 30% off of tuition for active duty members and their spouses. Most universities only offer about 10. SNU also extends up to 90 transferable credit hours for their military experience. So guess what? Your military experience no longer goes unrecognized and ignored. If you are a veteran or an active duty member or spouse and are interested in returning to school, please consider Southern New Hampshire University first, where their leadership has proven they care about supporting military families. Now, let's go ahead and get started with today's show. Today's special guest is author of a poetry collection titled Tears on Her Face, Healing the Heart, One Poem at a Time, authored by retired Navy veteran Kisha L. Phillips, copywritten and published by iUniverse. Author Phillips, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me.
You are very, very welcome. Listeners, Arthur Phillips and I served in the United States Navy on board the ARCO ARDM-5 in Point Loma, California. So shout out to our fellow shipmates on board the Hunt for Red October floating dry dock.
Yes, whoop whoop.
Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Well, I would say that I am every woman. What does that mean? It means that I wear more than a few different hats. I am a Navy veteran. I am a wife. I am a mother. I'm a child of God. I'm a mentor. I am an author, amongst many other things.
Very nice. Of course, this is a podcast that recognizes military folks. So tell me, what was your motivation for serving in the United States Navy?
To be honest and transparent, I decided to join the Navy one rainy afternoon when I was collecting carts at the Ralph grocery store in the rain and was like, wow, there has to be something better. I didn't really come from a military family. And I had graduated high school and worked there for about a year and a couple of months and was just like, I couldn't see myself being at Ralph for a career. So I wanted to do something different. Not necessarily travel, but I told myself, you know what, I have to go to college and I have to finish college. Although I will be honest and say that I was very scared to go to school just for reasons that we'll get into a little bit later. But that's what made me join, being in the rain, collecting cards.
And for those of you that don't know, Ralph's is a grocery store on the West Coast.
Yes.
And how long did you serve?
I served 20 years and about 7 days, I believe.
Oh, wow. Do you miss it?
I respect it. But I am very happy being retired. And just, I believe that it taught me so much. It taught me so much in a way of who I am today and who I can be. It taught me how to be resilient. It taught me, because I was a young girl from Peoria, Illinois. My mom moved us to San Diego, California when I was 14 years old. So it was completely different from where I was from. It was, you know, a lot of the people who I was introduced to or who I saw with my eye, I was like, wow, this is kind of like some of the stuff you see on TV. So it was pretty sheltered when I lived there. So when I moved here, it was definitely an eye-opener.
And you said Peoria, Illinois, and you know I'm from Milwaukee. That's probably why we got along so well.
Absolutely.
So what was your most rewarding and most challenging aspect of serving as an active duty military member?
My most rewarding was, to be honest, I believe my most rewarding was being a recruiter. I recruited for 17 years, but it wasn't most of the promotions or anything like that, although that is also a plus. But it was being able to help people who I felt were like me, who didn't have a lot offered to them, who came from, you know, the urban community and didn't have much. So for me to be able to give someone an opportunity to better their future, to pave their own way, that was the rewarding part. When I seen someone who had some challenges in the way, but me just being there, giving them a blueprint every step of the way, and then actually being able to see them raise their hand and then live, that was rewarding to me. Yeah. Challenges was being on time to work sometimes. Oh, did I say that out loud? Okay. I remember being a grown-up at 26 years old and being put on restriction because it was during a holiday stand-down. In the holiday stand-down, unless you really, I guess, took the time to either print it out and know when you're going to come in, because some days you are off and some days you come in, and then some days you just come in to muster. So one day I had duty, and then the next day I was supposed to come in and muster, but I thought it was a day off. And it was like sometimes you've seen who's really, really there for you, and then sometimes you see the people who might be smiling in your face, but really don't want to see you progress. Don't want to see you win and do well. And I remember getting a phone call from one of my big little sisters who is interviewing me right now. Katina shared with me. She gave me a call. She's like, "Girl, where you at?" I was like, "I'm at home in the bed. I'm not feeling well." She said, "Well, you better get in here because you're supposed to be here at work." And I said, "Are you kidding?" No. And I got there. I was late getting there, but I was alive and well. And what my superiors told me was like, "I was so worried about you. I didn't know where you were at." But she was able to call. Why weren't they able to call? They said they called, but they didn't call. They didn't call my phone. So basically, what the result in that was I got put on restriction. Also, they said that they were going to take money from my paycheck, and I had to stay there. It was like 30 days, and then I forget how much money. So they did suspend that and didn't take any of my money, because then I'd be in more trouble and not be able to pay my bills.
Right.
It was frustrating that I was an adult. However, I had to stay aboard this vessel and not be able to go home.
Right. Wow.
So that was very challenging for me. Along the way, I do believe that I grew some very, very thick skin, because in this world, you have to have thick skin. It's not a fairy tale. You have to understand what real life really looks like and be able to maneuver and function and still have joy.
That's right. Hindsight is always 20/20. So when did you realize that serving in the military was your best life decision or the biggest mistake ever?
I would say when I was able to finish college and not work. So when I retired, I was able to continue out my college education, because I probably, during that whole 20 years, even though it was my reasoning for joining, I still took maybe a class here and a class there and a class here, like not really focused on one particular goal, but just to say, yep, I'm in college. It wasn't until I retired and was like, uh-oh, what am I going to do now? And decided to go to school. Decided to stop saying I hate school, because that was something else. And to be honest, what that was fear of failing.
Yes.
Because I had been told that I was a failure many, many times, and I took that to be my truth. So denouncing the truth that I was a failure and that I never completed anything was when I decided to give it everything that I have and know that I could do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
That's right. I felt funny there for a moment. I want to beat up whoever said that. Okay. Did I say that out loud? My bad. I'm like, who do I need to put in a headlock? Okay, I'm done. So many transitioning military have difficulty navigating back into the civilian sector. So what did life look like to you post-military, and what sparked your interest to write?
I will say post-military, I have not gotten a full-time job yet, so that's what I am actually doing now. I would say it's a little scary. However, I know that, again, with assistance there is a program that does help military personnel, and that's who I am. I have interviews with them to kind of just guide me along the way. So that's why I'm just taking those steps, because the resources are there, so might as well use them. Now, what sparked my interest to write was, from what I can remember, the time that I started writing was probably about 9 years old. And I remember being in my bedroom and feeling like I didn't have anyone that I could go to and express myself or talk to. So I started to write. And I would read during that time as well and kind of lose myself in whatever novel I was reading. But I remember probably being about 9 or 11 and saying, I'm going to write a book. I remember saying that. But I never really, as I got older, as you experience just life, some of those things that are goals and dreams kind of become like a whisper or something that you've locked away because you really don't believe you can do it. Some people. And I really didn't believe that I could do it because I had my journals. I wrote all the time in my journals, and what I wrote in my journals were my feelings, things that I was going through. I was always able to use that as an outlet, use it as my own personal therapy. And so one day someone read it and was like, you should come out with a book. And I'm like, but they also, while reading it, was like, wow, were you going to kill yourself? And I said, probably thought about that because I just, on the outside looking in, you would be like, wow, she's so funny. She's just always happy. But I was so broken. When I went home and it was just me, I was so broken and still feeling so alone.
Wow. Okay. Yes, I've always seen you as just happy. You've always made me laugh.
I think that making people laugh and things like that was my way to escape my own, at the time, truth.
Sure.
My own hurt and my own pain. If I could make people laugh and happy, that's when I found myself the happiest.
Wow. let's go ahead and dig in then. So we recognized and acknowledged who you were while you were in the military, your post-military. So let's talk about Tears on Her Face, Healing the Heart, one poem at a time. Share a little bit about this beautiful cover art. It's you.
It's me.
It is.
So if you look closely, you'll see the tears on her face because I'm not her anymore. That's her. That's her who endured the pain. That's her who struggled to know what self-love is. That's her who just wasn't sure of herself. But if you look to the back, that's me.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely beautiful. Wow. So this book includes a collection of poems. Who is your target audience for this book?
I would say my target audience would go, even though it's only like one poem in there that I read all the time to my daughter's 4th grade class, which is called Smile. I just was there at her school on Friday during the Read Across America, reading that poem. And that poem allows me to open the door to share with them that emotions are real. So I would even say, I've read it to 1st graders. And again, that allows me to open the door to sharing with them how smiles are amazing. But sometimes we're just not smiling. And when you feel like you can't smile or you're not happy, those are real emotions. And it's okay to acknowledge those emotions. But in the same token, it's very important for you to share those feelings with somebody, whether it be a mom, whether it be a teacher, whether it's someone that you can trust, to share with them how you are feeling. And then remember the times that you are happy, and let's try to get back to that place. So I would say all the way down to our little itty bitties, all the way up. Actually, I think the last reading, I have one coming up, but my last book signing and reading and Q&A, I love to do Q&A so people can just ask away. I'm pretty transparent. A lot of times people want to know, like, okay, what'd you do to create this book or to write this book? And it took a lot because, again, I wasn't as confident. I ran into stumbling blocks that actually made me shelf the book. And so I love to do Q&As just to share with them and let them know, just like I was, you too can express yourself in a way of a book if that's what you are wanting to do. And the people who were in there was, like I said, really young all the way to, our more seasoned person. So, yeah.
So you mentioned Smiles, but also of this 68 poem collection, which poem do you favor the most?
The poem that I favor the most would be the one that probably barely got in there. On page 137, there is a poem called But God. And I wrote this the same day that I did my final submission. And this was pretty much, they were asking me to do the final look at the book. And I was like, man, I just wrote this poem and I want it in here. And I kind of snuck it in there. It cost a little bit more money, but I was like, I wrote it and I think it belongs in there. So it's called But God. And I'll read it for you if you like.
I would love that.
Okay, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to read it.
Go for it.
But God, I thought I was not worth his love, but at times I fall short. But God, I thought I could not go to him and ask for forgiveness because I knew better, and I did it anyway. But God, I remember not having enough food to eat and thinking, where would we get our next meal? But God, I remember the unselfish act of a woman who God sent to me as my godmother as she took food from her freezer to put on our table. But God, I remember her teaching me how to pray and battle the enemy. But God, I remember as a teen sleeping on the floor at my friend's house because I no longer had a home of my own. But God, I had a child out of wedlock and thought God would never bless me again. He gives me grace. But God, I remember wanting another chance at marriage the right way, and he sent me Mr. Awesome. But God, I remember thinking I would not be blessed with another child, yet he sent us an angel. But God is so good. He gives us more than we deserve. God is the way, the truth, and the life. If we align ourselves with the Word of God, he will give us the desires of our hearts because they will be his desires for us.
Beautiful. So tell me about it. Tell me about But God.
But God is, I think, throughout my life, just small nip of events in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So each line was just at different times in my life. I probably could have went on, but like I said, I was pressed for time trying to get this in there.
So there is a poem that stood out to me.
Okay, what is that one?
And that poem is Blood on the Brain, and that's on page 95. Now, I read it in my mind the way that I read it in my mind, but I'm very curious to know, how did you read it as the author?
Okay. Blood on the brain. I get headaches often, migraine. Feels like my head is bleeding inside. They started years ago. Abuse, disappointment, and tears, I don't know. For the most part, I feel it is caused by stress. If I don't feel it in my brain, then I feel it in my chest, in the form of a heartache. I used to be a careless person, and now I can say I am careful about what I say or do. I find myself stressing about work, home, my family, good health, my mother's addictions, conflictions, and homelessness. I'm one person. I have dreams that I have yet to fulfill or attempt to make real. The solution is simple. I need to be still, let go and let God, and stop trying to do things in my own will. So I get a lot of migraines, and I do believe that these migraines are brought on by the amount of thinking that I do, the amount of help I want to render to others, the amount of people I want to save. And in the past, I feel like I would just be all in and give my everything. It wasn't like, I would meet somebody and I'm like, okay, this feels like this is the one. I didn't really have a blueprint. I didn't meet my father till I was 30 years old. So it was like what I saw is the blueprint that I had for love, what real love looks like, which was a hot mess, to be frank. So, it typically ended in a heartache, a heartbreak, so to speak. I would be stressing for work, stressing about my home life, family, what's going on with this family member, whether it be my brothers, whether it was my mother, with the amount of migraines that I got, if something was really wrong with me, I always stressed about things like that. I stressed about my mom. I stressed about, her drug addiction, her being on the streets. She lived with me a lot of the time, but it was so toxic that when my oldest daughter was 2, I was moving, and I told her, which was one of the hardest things that I had to do in my life, was to tell her that she could not move with us, because there were certain things that she would talk about, and she was always talking about how she hated men and just very negative things, and I didn't want my daughter to grow up the way that I grew up. And so that was a way of me breaking the cycle.
Wow.
I loved her. She knew that I loved her, and she knew that I was enabling her. But it was really toxic for me. I remember being pregnant with her, and my mom lived with me. Being pregnant with my oldest, my mom lived with me, and she, sometimes she just spit out fire. She would say mean stuff, and I remember driving around all big and pregnant, crying my eyes out. Later, she apologized, but it was just the mere fact that, if you could, it was like a grown-up person's temper tantrum.
Wow.
When she wanted something, she asked, and if she couldn't get it, it turned into something else. After my daughter was born, and, I had to say, enough is enough. I'm not going to do this anymore. I deserve to be happy and have joy and show my daughter happy and positive things.
Absolutely.
So the solution later on, after I rededicated my life to the Lord, which was September 28, 2008, it was a rocky start, but I knew that I had a little girl that was going to mimic what I was doing. And I knew that what I was doing, even though it wasn't that bad, but it was like I needed something more. I wanted to give her more. I wanted to give her better opportunities. And to me, I knew that I needed the Lord to help me raise her, because her father wasn't with us to be a 2-parent household. And so a lot of times we'll give the Lord something, and then we'll take it back trying to do it our own selves. And I caught myself doing that. And so I knew that the solution was simple. If I give it to God and know that he had my best interest at heart. I'm his daughter.
That's right. That's right. So, Tears on Her Face, Healing the Heart One Poem at a Time. It is your self-expression of life and the different challenges that you experience. And these challenges, penning them was your form of healing. Well,
yes.
One of the things that I've asked all of my brothers and sisters in arms that participated on the Doctor's Corner is these type of challenges, no one are immune to them. So everyone has their journey, their persecution, their issues, their conflicts, their discord.
Right.
Why do you think that we, as veterans, are exceeding the non-veteran population in suicides? According to the Department of Veteran Affairs, 6,000 veterans a year are killing themselves.
Wow.
Why do you think that is happening?
I would say that, in my opinion, it would be that you have a person who is a veteran who had given, some of them feel like they've given their best years, their best life, their best health, all of that to an organization. And then when they get out or while they're in, they feel like they're not getting the support that they were promised. It's just not what they thought it would be. They're enduring things that they had no idea that they would endure. They're seeing things that they had no idea that they would see. I remember it wasn't until me being a recruiter, and after, sometimes you can hear something and it's almost just like on the autoplay, and one day you get a aha moment. And I remember listening to an officer tell the oath to someone, and they were repeating it, but it wasn't until that moment that I started listening to every line that I repeated it years and years ago. Like, wow, you're saying basically I'm ready to, I'm really ready to die for my country. But really you're not. You know, when you get recruited, when you join, most of the time you want somebody to pay for your college. You need a job, trying to get, better opportunities and things like that, but you don't know what you're selling yourself for.
That's right.
Until it happens.
Right.
And then when it happens, you're just not ready. And so, people who might be in the civilian sector, they just might not be enduring those type of things. And some of the things that I had to put up with while I was on active duty, most of the time those were in conjunction with other things that were just in my life, from decisions that I chose. And I told myself, I have to be able to get myself out of it. Now, I was saved when I was 11 years old. Some people, I just wasn't practicing that. I prayed all the time, so I knew God, but some people don't.
Right.
Some people don't have an outlet. And I remember me learning to write so early on in life. I said I had to be able to put this hurt and pain in a book, and then I can shut this book, and the hurt and pain can be in this book. So I had an outlet. I was able to put it somewhere else. I either did that or I ran like Forrest.
Right.
I just ran. But those were my outlets, that and loud rap music at the time. Just drowning myself in those particular things. It probably was a couple other things, but it seemed like when I was able to do like a pain dump, then I was kind of refreshed for the time being.
So I understand that loud rap music.
Some of my younger days, but yeah.
No, I get it.
And driving fast.
And driving fast.
So I had a few things that made me feel good, which was, just getting in the wind. And after a while, I got a motorcycle, and and that was very careless of me when I thought about it. And it wasn't until like 2007, being stupid and popping the wheelie and crashing.
Oh my God.
I was going to the hospital to see my mom in the hospital, and I battled back and forth with myself, and I said, should I put on this leather jacket or should I put this jean jacket on, be cute? And I rode in heels, So I'm the co-founder of a motorcycle group called Hurricane Biker Girls. I am no longer an active member or any of that, but for the time being that I was in that group and starting a group, it just ended up being something that, that was no longer for me. And, I pressed on smartly. But at that time, when I was up in the air popping that wheelie, and I was like, oh my gosh, all I could see was the bike falling on me and an accident and then me being no more. I jumped off the bike, which was like, wow. I must have hit the throttle. My bike shot down the street, and I went sliding down the street on my gloves like Superwoman until I flipped onto my back and just rolled up like a shell.
Oh, my God.
And when I stopped, I looked up, and the cars were still coming fast.
Oh, God.
So I jumped up, and I ran out of the street. My bike, thank God that it hit nobody. I remember my handlebar came off the bike. The bike wouldn't even roll. Some guys helped me get the bike, and there was like, it won't roll, like it barely could get out of the street. And I remember having this yellow ribbon, the ribbon of, I went on a memorial ride for another military member who had crashed their bike probably the weekend before. And I feel like God had put a shield around me when I slid down that street, because I went home with road rash in my hands because it had ate through my gloves, and a road rash on my hiney because he was like, good and well, you shouldn't have been doing that.
Wow.
So that was his spanking to me, good and well. You shouldn't have been doing that.
Wow.
So, but I got another bike the next month.
Oh, wow.
I know. That was a hot mess. But I gave it up in 2012.
Sure. Well, the reason why I asked is because, see, you had coping mechanisms, and that's something that I wanted to highlight. Coping mechanism wasn't detrimental per se.
Right.
Whereas, or some veterans are taking their lives. So what would you say to a veteran that may be in a dark place?
I would say talk to somebody. When I go to the colleges and I speak and I share and I talk about overcoming challenges, and I did share that, there were times that I didn't want to live and things like that, but I say you need an ally. You need somebody who you can call, who's going to be there, who's going to help you out of that dark place. There was a time when I retired, so I done finished a whole 20 years, and I remember being all in my uniform, all nice and beautiful and makeup done, and people came out to celebrate me, and I still had my uniform on, and I went home because I had an event later on that evening for like the reception, and I remember going to my room, and I was in my room by myself. I was still in my uniform, and I hear a voice in my head says, get your gun and shoot yourself. And I'm like, what in the world was that? Now, mind you, my mother passed away 21 days before my retirement. She had a stroke, and she passed away.
Wow.
And I knew that my mom would be at my retirement. I knew that I could hear her voice. She's sitting there right in the front row talking about, now that's my baby. I just foreseen all this stuff. I didn't finish 20 years. You were there the whole 20 years, and then you leave me before I could accomplish something that I could be proud of.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa. However, I remember my pastor saying probably, actually it wasn't until the week later, because I heard that voice again. And I remember running out of my room like, what in the world was that? That was super scary. It was almost like I was out of my body. And I ran out, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even think I told my husband right away. But the following week when I went to service, I remember my pastor said the enemy knows right when to strike. He knows he knows what your weaknesses are. He knows what your purpose in life is. So he's going to know when to strike. And I remember being in my room probably a week later, and I hear it again, get your gun and shoot yourself. And I remember the advice my pastor gave. He said, one day, or, the enemy knows, and he will whisper stuff in your ear. And when you hear that voice, you don't just leave it alone and act like you didn't hear it. You speak to it right away. So I remember at the top of my lungs, I was like, absolutely not. I will live and not die, Satan. You have no authority over my life.
That's good. You
will get up out of my house right now. And I did not hear that voice again. Now, that might not be someone else's story. They might not feel comfortable. However, when you hear something like that, if you're feeling sorrow, if you feel like you can't breathe, you need to reach out to somebody, because that's a temporary feeling. Just like the feeling you get when you're the most happiest. It is temporary. However, I choose joy each and every day. I could not be here right now, not by my own hands, by someone else's hands. So I know that I'm supposed to be here for a reason. Just like you are supposed to be here for a reason. We all have gifts. We all have things that we're supposed to do in life. You have to figure out what that purpose is so that you can fulfill it, so that you can walk in those gifts, so that you can share your trials and your tribulations with people, so that you can also share your triumph with people. We're supposed to be here to help one another. I don't care if you don't know them or you never seen them or they don't look like you. That doesn't matter, because we're all brothers and sisters in Christ.
And this is from a 20-year Navy retired veteran. So that's some excellent advice, and I thank you for that. So on a positive note, you recently had a book signing. How was it? And do you have any more forthcoming or more books on the way?
I did. I had one at one of the city colleges here to celebrate Black History Month, and it was awesome. I was a little nervous because it had been a while since I had one, but once I sat down and I just was like, I try to be an open book. I try to be as transparent as possible, because I want people to know how genuine I am, and to know that they too, if they're having feelings, if they're enduring some things, that they can be open, because the more you're able to share, to me, I feel the more you're healing. The more you're able to let it out, the more you are healing, because you're also healing someone else. And I remember a young lady who came up behind me. She was doing a musical piece, and she shared prior to, she said, I used to write, but now I don't, because people would use that against me. But hearing Kisha read what she read led me to perform one of my original pieces. And she actually recited a poem that she had wrote, and then she played her music, because she started to do her emotions and stuff into a musical form.
Wow.
And I thought it was amazing, because then another gentleman who went after her, who played the guitar, and he played like some blues and stuff like that, was amazing. Same thing. He was like, I wanted to just thank her, we all go through some stuff, and she encouraged me to just be open and know that even though I'm going through some stuff, it's going to pass. Just even those two people coming up to me and sharing, with their musical gifts, and saying that I was able to help them. And then I had some other lady who was like, just thank you for sharing your poetry. Like, it's like your story, and I feel it. And it's just amazing when you hear people share that what you're sharing, they can relate. And maybe it's helping them figure out, how am I going to get past this speed bump? Because most of the time, that trial is just a speed bump. So you might want to push on the gas a little bit more so you can get over the hump.
Well said. Well said. If you could encourage one active duty military member today, what is one life-saving, emotion-shifting sentiment that you would share to a fellow comrade?
I would say, and I would share, that in my lifetime, I was dealt a particular hand. And it's not always for you to play that hand. No matter what card you're dealt, does not mean that has to be your story. You could be the author to your own story, meaning you don't have to play those cards. My experience, I was told I would not graduate high school. So let alone I finished college. I was told I don't finish anything, but I'm a retired vet. I'm a published author. So no matter the card that I was dealt, that doesn't mean that I had to listen to those people. Although I did for so long, I allowed that to be my truth. But it wasn't my truth. It was lies. It was lies that was kind of like a stumbling block. It doesn't matter if you feel like you're supposed to be so much further along in life. It doesn't matter that you can't change 3 seconds ago, let alone 3 years ago. You have to build, what does your future look like? So you sit down and you write down your goals, you write down your dreams, and then you write down, what is it going to take to get me to this goal, to this dream? And it is hard work. It's not going to be easy, but then you find somebody else that could possibly mentor you, that's possibly doing something that you want to do, that's holding the title that you want to have, and you ask, hey, can you mentor me? My mom used to tell me, closed mouths do not get fed. So I ask for it all, and I'm going to let somebody tell me no, and I might hear 9 no's before I hear 1 yes, but it's worth it. That's because right. I don't stop. Sky is not the limit for me. I go beyond the sky. You can go beyond the sky. You don't have to stay in this lane. You can make your own lane. You're not in competition with the person to your left, competition to the person to your right. You are your own person. None of us has the same exact DNA. So you're not in competition with the person on Instagram, the person on Facebook. You don't really know how those people are really living. Plus, you're wasting time trying to keep up with them.
That's right.
Don't worry about that stuff. That's just wasting your good years.
Very well said. Very well said. Thank you for that. Kisha, do you have any additional information that you want to share with the listeners? For instance, where can they purchase your softcover? Where can they follow you? What would you like to share in closing?
Let's go to all the social medias that they can follow. At KISHALPHILLIPS. That's Kisha L. Phillips. On Instagram, on Facebook. My website is KishaPhillips.com. I would rather you inbox me to purchase a book. If you want to book me, you can call me at 619-431-2500. 619-431-2500.
I am so proud of you, and I'm so grateful that you made your way out, out of your dark place, and just keep shining. But thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you for your impassioned, purposeful contribution to the field of creative writing and literary art. I anticipate with your continued commitment, you will land among the poetic stars like Maya Angelou, Emily Dixon, Robert Frost, and even that masterful lyricist Tupac Shakur. So just keep doing what you do.
You can depend on it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you again, Kisha, for participating on today's show. Well, listeners, as we close another episode of The Doctor's Corner, I want to thank all of you for listening in and encourage you to share each episode with others so we can collectively augment this nation's reading levels by aiding and identifying great reads written by individuals who served. Tears on Her Face, Healing Her Heart, One Poem at a Time is a soft-cover, easy-read collection with emotion-provoking poetry. Very engaging poetry that presents some very, very dark areas, but culminates to the rising of a phoenix and victorious. As she stated during her interview, she is not who she was. I extend Tears on Her Face, Healing Her Heart, One Poem at a Time, 5 stars. Based on the smoothness of expression between the poems, the authenticity, the continuity and flow, and even more important, relatability. This softcover has compilations that can be read and used as an emotional guide and learning tools for the young at heart. We all need someone, and although currently we're wrapped tight in today's COVID quarantine, be sure you reach out to those friends and family members as needed. And use your gifts and talents as coping mechanisms to get you over those speed bumps. Again, thank you all for listening to another episode of The Doctor's Corner. Remember to listen, like, and subscribe. And if you are interested in advertising on the TDC, please email us at thedoctorscorner2018@gmail.com. Remember, reading is still fundamental. Be well and be safe.